Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this video, we're going to take a look at the database migration service. So I'm going to go ahead and show off this service here. If you're in CA Central 1 like I am, you're not going to see all the functionality. If you go to North Virginia, you'll notice, or there should be a difference that you'll see more stuff here on the left-hand side. I can accomplish everything I want in CA Central because I'm really just focused on replication here in this video. I made several attempts to do serverless replication. I'm not getting the performance I'd like, so we're actually going to do a replication instance, despite it this folder here being serverless. So I'm actually going to go here into my DMS directory in our common AWS examples repo, and I'm just going to rename this to, because I'm not doing that, I'll just do instances here. Now, there's not a huge difference between serverless and instances, but instances, I think we're going to just get more a much more reliable and quicker experience. And if we want to test the endpoints for our source and target, we have to spin up an instance anyway. So the idea here is that I have a Postgres CloudFormation here and a MySQL CloudFormation template to going to RDS. They're using T3 micros. And the key thing that you'll want to do is update the engine version. I just put it here in the default. So if you go over to the RDS service, okay, so if we go over to RDS, and we go to databases, and we create a database here, and we go over to MySQL, right? We have engine version 8.0.35, and that is something that you'll want to update because over time these versions update, and so this is what they are for me currently, and you'll want to use the latest. The other thing is that I'm hard coding the password into the default, so under here it's just password. In real practice you would not do that, but for our example here, we're trying to keep everything very conventional so that we don't have to worry about the connection URLs not working correctly. Both of these have a security group that's just opening up the port to everywhere, and it has egress out to everywhere, okay? And we're deploying these into the default VPC. We go into our bin script. You'll have to replace these in here. So this is my VPC and subnets for my default one. Make sure you use the default subnet, as that's going to make your life a lot easier because those will have IPv4 turned on. These databases also have public access. Again, trying to do everything we can to make this stuff super easy. So I'm going to cd into this directory here. I'm going to go ahead and trigger these deploys. So we'll go bin deploy MySQL. And we'll type in CloudFormation. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and deploy the other one here. Just give that a moment here. I'm not sure why this other one's not showing up here. I did run the other one, right? Deploy Postgres, yeah. That's fine. I'll just run this script again. It's not a big deal. Just hit enter here. Okay, so it's suggesting that it is here. If I don't see it here, it could be a issue with, yeah, this one says US East 1, so I'll go back here and just change this. Yeah, that explains why. I think before I was having issues, so I tried to switch the region. This is probably like the 8th time I've tried to do this lab. It's a very difficult lab to do. Anything with databases and things like that can be difficult just because there can be connection issues. In fact, I was having connection issues with GitPod, so you'll see me using Table Plus to connect, which is not the way that I normally do it. I usually do it programmatically, so I would use these, install the client and connect to them. But anyway, we'll see how this goes here. Once these are created, we'll come back here and go on to the next step. I mean, I guess while we're waiting here, we should probably launch up the replication instance because that does take some time to spin up. So I'll do that in parallel. So just say my DMS instance, however you want to type that. We'll go down below. I'm going to choose a T3 medium. I might go with the large here. It does cost more, but the more powerful it is, the faster this will go. So if you're not comfortable with that, you can go with the micro, but understand it'll be really slow. And in some cases, you aren't really saving money because it just takes so long. But you'll have to decide what you want to do. I'm going to do a single AZ here. because that's all I need. Allocated storage is fine. IPv4 is fine. I'm going to make this publicly accessible. That sounds good to me. I don't care as long as it's in CA Central 1 here. We have the default VPC, which should be fine because everything is open to the internet, so it should be able to connect to it with no issue. I'm going to go ahead and create this replication instance. Okay, so this is going to take some time, and those are going to take some time. Once this is spun up, we will test the connections. We'll also test it via Table Plus, okay? All right, so our replication instance is ready. So I don't think we set CloudWatch logs on this part. I think it's when we run the database migration task, so I'm not worried about that currently. I'm going to just click into this and take a look at the settings to see if there's anything that I may have missed. As we run this, we want to make sure we are collecting everything that we need to so we don't have any issues. So what we're going to need to do is add endpoints, and apparently I have some endpoints from here before that I forgot to delete. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete these because those are no longer relevant. So let me just give me a moment there to delete these. Just a moment here. I'm just working to delete those endpoints, and while that's deleting, what I'm going to do is test the connection to our databases as I imagine that they are ready. So I'm going to use a program called Table Plus. Again, normally I would just install the clients and connect through here. I'm having some Git pod issues, and so I just want to make it really simple. So you can get something like, Table Plus. They should, I believe they have a free version. There's lots of software that's like this that connects to a variety of databases. Let me just give me a moment to pull that up, okay? All right, here we are. So what I'm going to want to do in Table Plus here is create a new connection. So we'll do one for Postgres, and we'll have to fill in the information. I'm just going to move this a little bit off screen so I can see what I'm doing. Well, there's a few things we know we can fill in right away. So we know this is going to be 5432. The username is going to be Postgres, which is the default that is always set. Password is going to be password. The database is called my database. So the only thing we need to fill in here is the host. So what we'll do is go over to RDS here, and we will go ahead and grab that host for Postgres. All right, so we'll go over to databases here. I'm going to go into Postgres, and I'm going to grab this endpoint. Great. And we'll go ahead and paste this in. So just say PSQL connection. And we're going to go ahead and test that connection, make sure that we can establish a connection. That means that it's good. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to go ahead and make the MySQL one just to save myself some time. We'll go ahead and say new MySQL. And this one's going to be 3306, which is the default. Admin is the default. Password is the default. My database is what we set it as to make it really easy. Say my SQL connection. And now we just need to place that host in there. So what I'll do, again, is go back over to here to databases, and we'll go to our MySQL instance, and we'll grab this endpoint, and we'll place this in here, and we'll test that connection. So it's good, and we will save it. And so now we have our two connections. So I want to just populate the Postgres database with a table and a table and some data. So I have that over here. It's in the Postgres one. Okay, and what we'll do is go ahead and click on the SQL tab, paste it in here. And so we are going to create this very simple table called examples, or example table. And then I want to populate it with some data. So I'm going to go over to here, this data here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab that. If you're wondering where I got this data, I just asked ChatGPT to make me some data very quickly. So it wasn't too hard to do that. So we'll go ahead and paste that in and hit run. We'll confirm that there is data there. So we should see it here. I'm not sure why we're not seeing the tables here on the right-hand side. I'm just going to close that and reopen it, make sure that the table is there. Okay, so the table is there, which is excellent. And it is in the public schema, and we have our data, right? Now, we could create a table on the MySQL side, and I actually did kind of start doing that, but when you run a migration, you can tell it to create the target table or import into an existing table. I'm going to try this without creating the table on the other side and just tell it to do that itself. But anyway, I'm going to go back over to here, and now let's create our endpoints, because we're going to need those endpoints in order to actually establish a connection. Our source is going to be our Postgres one, and this looks fine. We're using the manual data here. This is going to be password, and I think that we have to set required here, otherwise it will run into issues. I remember it would not connect unless I did required specifically for the SSL connection. It was an issue for MySQL, but we'll see what happens here. There are additional endpoint settings. I never touched that. We'll leave that alone. And I do want to test this connection, but I'm going to go ahead and create it first, and then we'll test it, because we just do it that order. Ignore that password prompt, and we'll test that connection. So we'll run the test, because we want to make sure that that works. As that is going, I'm going to go ahead and add the other endpoint. Okay, and so this will be our target. This will be MySQL. And I'm going to drop this down to, or sorry, select this here and select MySQL. And this is going to be manual. It's going to be password. Okay. And I didn't do this for the other one, but notice that there is no require option. So I can just leave this as none. We'll go ahead and create that endpoint. Ignore that password prompt. We'll go into MySQL. We'll test the endpoint. Okay. And notice we're testing that against a replication instance. So if these tests pass, then they should be able to establish a connection, right? And I did this before and it still didn't work. But it's frustrating. Like DMS is like, once you have it all configured, it's great. But if you run it on something and you have an issue, then you're going to run into some serious issues there. And I'm actually surprised the connection hasn't immediately tested, but it says that it is testing. So I guess it's working on that test. I would assume that it would be really fast, because it's like, let's just connect to it, right? But whatever. We'll give it some time here to establish its connection. So this one was successful. Postgres was successful. So that is good. We'll go over to MySQL. And that one's successful. So that's telling me that both of them are in good working condition. And so we should be in good shape. Again, I don't know why we need schemas for the endpoints. Let me just read about that for 2 seconds. So yeah, the docs don't mention anything about it. So again, I'm not sure if I really need to fill anything in there, but I'm going to leave that in the back of my mind going, I wonder if I have to do something special there. Anyway, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to want to now run a migration task. So we'll go ahead to migration tasks, and we'll create a task. We'll just say migrate, simple, whatever we want to call that. We'll go to our replication instance. I'm going to choose the source database, the target database. And we have a few options here. We have migrate existing data, migrate data and replicate ongoing changes, and replicate data changes only. What's interesting about this is that if you were to go to serverless replication, they actually name this a little bit different. So if you go here, they represent it as this, the CDC change data capture. It's the same thing. It's just that they're representing this a little bit different. Okay. And so anyway, we have the option migrate existing data. That's all we really want to do. We don't care about ongoing changes. If you had a really large database and you had stuff that was still being written to it, then that's why you would do that. But anyway, what I'm going to do here is go down to the task settings. And so here we have the options to do nothing, drop tables on target. And so there are no tables to drop, but I'm going to leave that alone. We have the LOB setting. I'm going to leave this to limited LOB. This is for large objects. And so we don't have any large objects, but I'm just going to leave that alone so we don't have any issues. We have validation with data migration. I usually don't utilize this, but I think I'm actually going to set this here to apply the setting table. Target table preparation mode must be set to do nothing. Okay, so that's something that we'll have to consider. Okay, so I'm not 100% sure if I care about that. I mean, like, it's so easy to confirm it, but we'll come back here in a second. One thing I do want to turn on, and I never seem to turn on, is CloudWatch logs, because if we do run into an issue, it'd be really nice to know what's going on, okay? Because if there's an issue on the source of the target, it will capture that, and then we can investigate that. Don't care about this. And then we have our table mappings. So this is how it's going to know how to map stuff. We have to have some rules here. If we look up some basic rules, we'll just say... selection rules, let's say selection rules DMS example. They should have one in the docs here. Maybe it was the next one here. Here we go, it's this one. And so this is what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this. And we'll go back over to here. So what we're looking at is we're saying, okay, we have a rule type. So what we're going to select in our source and bring over to our target. The schema in our what do you call it? Our database in our Postgres database is called public. And then we need the name of the actual table, which is example table. So we'll bring that over to here. The percentages, if you want to do wildcard, you could wildcard both. But when you have Postgres, you have a bunch of you have a few tables that you don't want to carry over, because it's not just like there's no tables. It'll be like schema information, stuff like that. And so I don't have confidence in having the wildcard there, and I want to be very targeted for this. You can obviously write multiple rules. We have the action as include, which they might describe what that means here. Include, Do they describe it? A value that includes or excludes objects. Okay, so you can say include, exclude. It's basically that simple for the rules. We'll go back over to here, and I'm going to scroll on down. Pre-migration assessment warns you of potential migration issues before starting the task. Note that DMS enables pre-migration assessments by default when you create a migration task. I mean, that sounds good, but it sounds like I can have one or the other. So if we have validation, I can't do that. So I think I'd rather have this on. If there are issues, we'll look into the CloudWatch logs and see if it tells us anything. I think that a lot of times I just don't do this is because I don't feel like creating an S3 bucket. But this time I'm going to bite the bullet and make an S3 bucket and not be super lazy. So I'm going to go over to S3. I'm going to also make sure this is in the same region. I'm not sure if it matters, but I just don't want to have any issues. So I'm just going to do that here today. We'll create a new bucket here. And this is in CA Central 1. Make sure it's there. We'll say DMS migration. And I'm going to go over here and say create the bucket. I think that maybe it's a taken name. So let's just say have some numbers here on the end like that. Whatever, we'll create that bucket. There we go. I'm going to go back over to here, browse the buckets, and we'll refresh this here. I know that the bucket is here, so I'm just going to go S3:// like that. I don't know if it needs a folder. We'll just say report like that so that it is happy. Yep. And an IAM role that can access the S3 bucket. So here it's suggesting that we need an IAM role, which is kind of a pain, but I guess we'll go ahead and set that up as well. Again, just trying to increase the chances that this is successful because it's such a pain if this doesn't work. And I'm going to go ahead here and create the role. Well, I'll create the policy first. And this will be a JSON file. And so we want to, I'm just going to keep it simple and say all S3 actions. And this will be for a specific bucket. So I'm going to go down here and add a resource. And it will be all resources here. Not exactly what I want. I actually want a very specific ARN. So I'll just do this. And then maybe I can do this. And maybe that will serve all of its use cases. Let's take a look here. Missing the ARN field. Oh, because it's not the ARN. Sorry. We'll go back over to here and I'll actually grab the ARN of the bucket. Yeah, there it is. And we'll try this again. Sorry for the small text. It's just how it is. I think we're supposed to have a trailing one here. I'm going to go ahead and do this now. And we'll do that. Maybe it's not supposed to have trailing on it. There we go. And so that should capture everything for that bucket. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll just say DMS report bucket policy. Okay, so go ahead and create that. I'm going to go over to roles and we'll create our role. This will be our for DMS. And so we're saying we're trusting DMS. We're going to go and find this policy we created. We'll go ahead and create that. We'll just say role here on the end. I'm going to copy that so I can quickly find it. We'll create that role. We'll go back over to our database migration. I'm going to refresh this. And I'm looking for that one there. We have obviously a lot in here, which is kind of annoying. But we know it's DMS. I'm going to just press DMS to get to DMS. And this is a little bit frustrating based on how long it is. I'm going to give this another refresh just in case it didn't pick it up. Wow, is there a lot in here? I'm going to scroll up here. DMS. And some of these aren't even really in order, which is kind of frustrating, but it is not. It's not showing up here, and some things are not in order, which is a bit frustrating. Let's go back to our roles. Let's make sure that one was created. It's right there. It's for DMS. So what I'm going to do, this is annoying. I'm just going to copy this rule out because we're going to have to remake this. It's not doing what we want it to do. So we'll go ahead and create this again. We'll just say DMS task, and we'll say replication instance and source here and target and existing, which is fine. And we'll leave that alone. We'll leave that alone. We'll leave that alone. We'll turn on CloudWatch logs. We will paste in our rules again. We will leave that on. We will choose our bucket here, which is DMS. There it is. We will then go find that role, that DMS role. There it is now. Weird that it wouldn't show up even though we have a refresh. And we have some prerequisites. I don't know if any of this really matters, but I'm going to go ahead and let it do whatever it wants to do here. Manually start, which is totally fine. Okay, we'll go ahead and create this task. And so notice that it is creating it. So we'll wait for that creation to finish, okay? All right, so it looks like it's in a status ready. The question is, what about that pre-assignment, pre-migration assignment? And now we actually have a warning, so that is interesting. Let's click into it and see if it tells us why. Unsupported data types. And this might be the reason why I had failures happening before. Let's go into this and take a look here. So it's saying salary is a numeric data type and it has an issue with this column identified as partially supported. Okay, so not exactly sure why that would cause a failure, as when you talk about numbers, let's go back over to here to Postgres, which is here. You'd think that this would be available both in Postgres and MySQL. Let's take a look at MySQL data types and see where this could run into an issue. I imagine that they would have a decimal type. So we'll go to numeric here. And so I'm looking to see what they have. And so I see double right here. Yeah, so there's double. And so that should not be an issue, but it is just giving us a warning to saying, hey, this could be problematic during migration. Okay, so unsupported data types as partially supported. Okay, so I'm not worried about that, but it's nice to see that assessment so we have an idea that there could be a concern. But more or less everything else seems to be okay. Some of these have NAs, but I guess that's because there are no LOBs, so that kind of makes sense. What I want to do is go back over to our stack, and it says that it's ready. I'm not sure what the quick view and compare does. I've actually never clicked on that before. I would imagine that we'd have to run it first before we can see anything. Yeah, so I don't think that's going to be very useful unless we actually do our migration. Let's go ahead and start it to the next step. It looks a little bit different because normally I don't see this create migration, and so I'm a little bit confused. But I'm guessing what we need to do is move as the start. It doesn't say start, it just says move. So choose a new replication instance for the task. It's not what I want to do. I just want to run it. So yeah, I'm a little bit confused, but just give me a moment here to see what needs to happen next, okay? So what I'm thinking is that maybe this whole task was for that. Like if we hit restart, would that start it up and do the migration? So I'm not 100% certain, but it could just be poor language here. But I guess it says restart resume, so resume would be the next step, right? So that's probably what we need to do. So we'll let this run out and see how it goes. Okay, this is going to take a little bit of time here, okay? All right, so didn't have to wait that long. It says the load is complete. And again, I just want to point out that the more compute you give to DMS, the faster these things generally are, as long as you're not having a connection issue. But let's go take a look at the table statistics. And this is the first time I've actually seen this work. I think maybe my issue previous times was I just did not specifically name the table in the schema. But it looks like it's suggesting that it has moved over 56 rows. I'm pretty excited about this. Let's go over to Table Plus and verify it. So right now I'm logged into Postgres. We'll click back here and we'll go into our MySQL connection. Okay, and I don't see anything in here. So that's not necessarily a good thing, but it has suggested that it did do something. So again, I don't see a table. Well, it's better than before, but anyway, we'll go here and it says 56 full load rows, total rows. It says applied inserts 0. So you'd think that you'd see something in here or any inserts, but at least I'm getting information here because before I would get nothing, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make my way over to CloudWatch. I'm going to see if we have any logs that might have told us if anything was wrong, okay? So I'm going over here to CloudWatch. We're going to log groups here. And we'll give it a moment here to load. And somewhere we'll have DMS. So we have these under here. I'm not sure which is which, as I have two here. I might have tried doing this before, and so I'm not exactly sure which one's newer. But I guess we can go back here and take a look. So this one is called 6CS. I don't see that here. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure which is which, but I suppose we could just open this up and take a look, unless they're all relative or relevant. So I'm going to open this one up here, and this one, and this one. Anytime they feel like opening here, I wouldn't mind. Give it a moment. And so this one was 18 hours ago. So that does not sound like something that happened today. This one was 44 minutes ago. This one was 9 minutes ago. So this one I'm going to, I guess, is junk, the H1. So I'm going to go ahead here and just delete this and get this out of my way so I can see clearly what I'm doing here. And so this one was 18 minutes ago. So I'll click into this one. The specified log group does not exist. So this has nothing in it. Sorry, maybe we have more than one open here. Let's just close this again here. I'm going to give this a hard refresh, because I'm getting mixed up myself here, right? Okay, we'll give it a moment here. Good, we'll scroll on down. And so we have DMS serverless replication, right? And then we have this one, the task itself. So this one was, oh, it's so slow loading here. This one was how long ago? I'm not sure. We'll click into it. Replication is being deleted. So I think this is me deleting an old one. So I think this one is junk. Yeah, that's serverless. Yeah, we're not doing anything serverless here. So, I'm getting confused. I think those are just old serverless ones. I'm just not carefully reading. And so this one probably is the one that recently ran. There we go. Okay, we're getting data. So what can we make sense of this? If we open this up, I'm just going to carefully read through it here. I'm just going to pause here and see if I can find anything relevant, okay? All right, so here it's saying loaded finish, 56 records transferred. And then here it's saying loaded temporary CSV file. So it seems like it exports it out to a CSV and then re-imports it. But it's not indicating that anything is wrong here. So it is a bit confusing. I think we do have 56 records. If we go back to Table Plus here for a moment, and we were to reopen this here. Right, we have this table, and there's 56 records. But the question is why is this one not showing up correctly? The only other thing I think of is that maybe I could edit this. These aren't obviously local, but this is my database. What if we don't connect to any database here? We just say test the connection, because you can do that as well. And I'm just trying to find if there's any items in here. So we'll go to databases here on the left-hand side. And so here we see our tables. What if we go into public? So here it is. Okay, so it did import it. It worked fine. It's just that it imported it at the same schema. And so it created the schema public under here. So again, we'll just show you it again. And so we have my database here, and then we have public here. And so it's just a difference in structure. But the point is it did definitely work, and it imported it over. But because it didn't go exactly where we wanted to go, that could be an issue, like with user permissions and stuff like that. I would imagine we'd have to play around with the selection rules to figure that out. I'm not going to do that here today. The point is that we successfully did a migration, and it worked. We could go attempt the serverless one, but every time I run it, it's so darn slow, I don't even want to risk it. It's not fun. It's not worth our time. So I'm going to call this a success, and we're going to go ahead and tear this all down. So what I'm going to do is go over to my, I don't think we have to delete these. Do we need to delete these? Yeah, we do. So we'll go ahead and delete those, because if we don't delete the migration task, then I can't get rid of the endpoints, which I learned a moment ago. So we'll delete that first. And while that's deleting, I'm going to go over to S3 and clean up that S3 bucket. Also, I'm going to go to CloudFormation and tear down our two databases here. So say delete, and we'll delete that one. Okay, we'll go to S3, and I want to empty this bucket. And again, this took me like 8 tries to get this lab to work. So don't feel discouraged if it doesn't work. There's so many things that can go wrong, especially when you are migrating data and working with database connections. It's just such a big pain. So understand that it's a struggle for me. And I have moved a lot of data using DMS before. So, it is the nature of things here. But what I'm going to do is go back over to here. That task is deleted. We'll go ahead and delete the endpoints. So say delete, and we'll delete this one. Okay. And these should delete fairly quickly. I'll just give it a moment here. All right, our endpoints are gone. Now let's get rid of that replication instance, which obviously is expensive. And we'll go ahead and delete that, and we will wait for that to delete. I believe that was the last thing we have to delete, but we will wait that one out, okay? All right, there we go. So that instance is gone, and we are all done. So I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.